つもりがなくても、なんか言ってる人もいるから、なんだろう、それって嘘じゃん。
Welcome to the Lazyfluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Ayami.
And the topic of the day is communicating with Japanese people. Before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and or drop a review on the platform you're listening on. And if you feel so inclined, support us on Ko-Fi. We appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, communicating with Japanese people. A question we get and choose to ignore quite frequently on this podcast is some variant of I'm looking to date/marry a Japanese girl. How can I do that? As this question comes across as a little creepy and gross, we will not be answering that directly, but I will be able to tell you how to communicate with people so you don't scare them away. This was inspired by a lot of things, but one in my head was a friend of Ayami's started a new relationship, and I feel like every, 40 seconds or something, there's some new, like, how should I read this? Am I reading this too far? And so this isn't like purely romantically, it's gonna be friendship as well, but some of the stuff I've learned about communicating with people, as well as Ayami's perspective as a Japanese person, about, how do you communicate with someone who's not Japanese and vice versa. Ayami, how would you describe Japanese people, or maybe at the very least, how you think they differ from, let's call this Americans, from what your understanding of Americans are?
なんだろうね。なんか、全体的に、相手を、なんて言うんだろうね。傷つけないっていうのもあれだけど、なんか本心を言ってない。これもなんかどっかのエピソードで何回か言ってんだけど、ご飯行こうって、次ご飯行こうってちっとも思ってないのに、ご飯行こうって言ったりとか、あと、また今度、なんか、なんとか何個かやろうね、みたいな言っても、いや、本当は思ってないみたいな。なんか、私そういうの苦手でさ、なんだろう。なんか、ある時、知ってる人と、4人、なんていうの？いいや、言っちゃうわ。先輩と、なんか、同学年の人と、ご飯食べに行って、で、なんか、その先輩は結構遠くのとこ行っちゃうのね。で、なんか、同じ学年の子は、先輩会いに行きますよとか言ってたのね。で私正直さ、なんか、なんだろう、6月6月忙しいから、会いに行けないんだけど、なんか同じ学年の人は、いや、6月絶対会いに行きます、みたいな言ってたの。でもさ、なんか、その人はもう本当に、なんていうの、会いに行くつもりだったかわかんないけど、なんか、つもりがなくても、なんか言ってる人もいるから、なんだろう、それって嘘じゃん。私そういうの苦手で、嘘つくぐらいだったら、なんか忙しいから別の時にチャンスがあったら行きますとか言った方がいいんじゃないとか思ったんだよね。
Yeah, that would fall into the category. I have some categories that I would describe generally apply to most Japanese people. Emphasis on most. Obviously, not all Japanese people are the same. And I also saw, obviously, the dynamic between Japanese people and non-Japanese people is a little different than the dynamic between Japanese people for a lot of different reasons. But in terms of what kind of you're suggesting, where someone says they don't want to do something, and so instead of saying they don't want to do it at all, they actually double down almost. As a way, it's like a weird game of chess where you're thinking, you're almost overcompensating. You're like, I don't want to do this, but I don't want to hurt them. Therefore, from their perspective, they'd want to hear that I want to do it so that they don't think I don't like them, even though I don't like, or maybe I don't like them. Maybe for one reason or another, you can't do it. So it's really hard to tell, and you'll probably talk about it later, if you actually are on good terms with the Japanese person, I will say. But I have 5 categories, maybe 6 here. Maybe we'll count them, 5, I think, about how I think Japanese people tend to be very different, at least for me, and I'd say Americans. I'm not going to apply this to all Europeans because I know some Europeans are more similar to Japanese people than I would say Americans are. But I want to get your thought on here. So we'll go down through each one. But the first category I have is indirect. So that's kind of what you were talking about. I put something like, if you hear a maybe, it means no. If you hear someone suggest to do something else, that means a no to the first thing you suggested. If you hear someone ask like further questions about something you said instead of just like an affirmative yes, then that also means no. Go ahead.
あとなんか、まあ、どうやってフレーズしようかな。なんか、まあ、ある時、なんかまあ学校のプロジェクトで何かをやるみたいなのあったのね。で、それで、まあ部外者を連れて行くと。でも、私のなんか、まあ、同じグループの、まあ、ペアみたいな感じのが、その部外者を連れて行くのは、学校のプログラムだから良くないんじゃないみたいなことを言ってて。でも、その人は単に、まあ、部外者を学校に連れて行その学校のプログラムに参加させるのに反対なんじゃなくて、ただただ部外者が嫌いなだけっていう、なんていうのダボをなんていうんだろう。遠回しに、なんだ、言うみたいな感じで。いや、その部外者のことがさ、なんか連れて行くのが嫌だったらさ、それが嫌だから、ちょっとやめてほしいってなんていうの言えばいいのに、なんか、なんだろうね。遠回しに、これはこうだからこうじゃないみたいな。しかもその遠回しに行ったのもさ、全然なんか、なんだろう、辻褄合わないっていうか、なんていうの論理的にちょっと意味わかんないんよ。から、なんだろう、思ってるならなんか言ってほしいし、それに対してさ、こっちも対処するし、みたいな感じだから、ね、難しい。
Well, I put that kind of dynamic under what under structure, and risk aversion. So I think Japanese people tend to heavily rely on structure in terms of inviting someone to a group. I put this in things like it's very hard to be spontaneous with Japanese people. If you want to do something the day of, it's almost impossible. Like whether even if it is possible, I think just the idea of doing something on the day of is extremely foreign. It's like having things planned. And I mean, like a week in advance is like the only way I feel like you're going to get anything done with anybody, unless you meet a very specific type of person. So I put the most common ways people hang out are like an izakaya or some club event that kind of you're talking about here. And therefore the idea of someone not in outside a group coming into a group, in my head, that's breaking an expectation, which, breaks the idea of established structure and makes things feel more risky. And so,
なんかさ、部外者を連れていくっていうのにさ、なんだろうね。なんか対応してない気がして。まあこれもさ、本当に人によりきりだけど、なんか、まあ、私の周りでは結構そういう人が多くて、なんか友達の友達を連れてくのはちょっと、みたいな感じで、多分、連れてった場合に、多分自分自身が、まあなんか喋れないとか、なんかちょっと気まずいとかっていう気持ちになるから、ちょっと嫌だみたいな多分、意見なんだろうけど、でもさ、友達の友達を連れてきたりとかしないとさ、なんだろう、友達の輪っていうのは広がっていかないしさ、なんか新しい発見とかもないしさ、なんだろう、なんかそういうのに慣れてない人が多いのかなっていうのは感じたね。あと、まあ大学とかそういうアカデミックな場面でも、なんか私の大学とかは、なんだろう、部外者は入れないみたいな感じ。まあ単科大学っていうのもあるかもしれないんだけど、なんて言うんだろうね。多分、なんか早稲田とかだったらさ、結構、まあ、留学生とか入れてるから、なんか、マジで大学生じゃなくても学校の中入れたりとか、なんか、アクティビティ参加できたりとか多分あると思うんだけど、なんだろう、公式の場所には部外者入れちゃいけないとか、なんかそういうのは多分アメリカはないよね。なんかもう、大学がさ、街みたいな感じになってるし、っていうのもあると思うけど。
with some sports teams, it can be like that. I remember there was a cross-country team at the school I went to. I ran track primarily, but cross country exists, and my brother ran cross country. So I remember going to I can't remember what the word for it. It was kind of like a slam poetry session, except slamming the other team. Like there's another school that's close by to the school I went to, and they would like have very vulgar slam poetry against them. And I walked in and it felt extremely cult-like. And my brother like asked if it was okay to invite one of his friends who happened to be from that school, just because he was like a friend, like a longtime friend. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. But then the second they came in, it felt like it was a World War II, and it's like, and they were like the Japanese, and you brought an American into the circle, and you're like, wait, did you guys bring this in to actually to set this up into like a trap? It was a very weird, hostile moment. And for many people play sports, they're like, oh, this is obvious. You can't bring the other team. But for me, I played like a lot of sports. I'm not sure how we've talked about it. I played like, I think 11 different sports in like actual official clubs and different capacities for, multiple like 7, 8, 10, like 11 years, depending on the sport. And for me, I've never been somebody to have animosity of the other team, because if you lose, you just, in my head, you suck. You know what I'm saying? You take the L, you take the L. And track, I feel like, is a very good, example of, hey, you lost because you were slower. What can you say about that? But going back to the topic with, we're talking about making friend groups. I definitely think that if you don't, like, that's one of the things that makes it really hard to establish friends in Japan, is making friends with individuals is hard, because I said individuals are part of a group, and a lot of their identity, tends to be directly related to the group. So making just a one-off friend can be difficult. But the thing is, you might not want to be the person who just wants to be in one group. And that's, at least, when you find myself, like, it gets even more difficult, because normally it's you're a friend within a group and you're inside a circle, or you don't have friends. So if you're type of person who likes having like one friend here, one from there, and like having a lot of different acquaintances like kept at the same time, it's harder to do that, because the less that you're inside one of the groups, the more that the group will naturally want to ostracize you from it.
なんか内と外概念が結構多いから、なんかすごく生きづらいというか、あとなんか全然ちょっとトピックっていうか、なんて言うんだろう。まあ、変わっちゃうかもしれないんだけど、なんかある時、まあ何人かでご飯食べに行ったのね。でその時に、まあ、なんて言うんだろう。まあ、ある、チームの、まあメンバーで行ったんだけどね。で、私が一人の子について、何々ちゃんって、なんだろう。なんだっけ、なんて言ったっけな。あ、そうだ、なんかある先生が、なんか、バカっぽくて、なんだろう、面白い生徒好きだよね、みたいな、って言って、誰かが言って、それに対して私が、何々ちゃんとか結構、その先生に好かれるじゃんとか言ったのね。で、言った直後になんか場面が凍りついちゃって、私はなんか、なんだろう、バカっぽくて、なんだろう、明るいっていうのが、なんかいい意味で、心の中で思ってたから、何々ちゃん、なんか、めっちゃ好かれるじゃんみたいな、いい意味で言ったのね。けど、なんか周りの人たちは、それをなんかバカなんていうの？悪い意味？だからその人がバカで、なんか成績も良くなくてっていう意味になんか、ちょっと捉えてて、で、何言ってんだよみたいな、謝れみたいな感じで言われて、いやいや、そういうつもりじゃないんだけどと思って、なんだろう、結構私の、なんだろう、基準がちょっと人とずれてんのかなと思って。私は本当にいい意味で言ったのね。だっていいことじゃん。なんかバカっぽいってさ、なんだろう、おどけた感じで、私はすごくいい意味に捉えるんだけど、どう？なんかファニーみたいな感じで。
Well, technically speaking, when you use poi as a grammar structure, poi means it's not the thing, but it resembles the thing.
まあね、ちょっと、実際のまあ会話どんな感じだったかちょっと忘れちゃったんだけど、でもなんかそういう感じだったのね。なんか、その先生は、真面目とかじゃなくて、ちょっと、変な答えを、言う生徒が好きなのね。変なっていうか、なんていうの、ちょっと、まあ、的外れなみたいな。そんなのありえないでしょみたいなことを言う生徒と、なんかなんて言うんだろうね。まあ、成績良くないって言ったらあれだけど、まあ、ちょっとそういう子が好きなのね。けど私は、なんかそういう人ほどさ、なんか結構、なんだろう。何も言わないより、変な答えでもいいから言う人の方が素晴らしいと思うし、そういった意味で、何々ちゃんって、そうだから、まあ、先生に好かれるよねっていう、なんていうの、つもりで言ったのよ。
I mean, I would say that in general, if you're trying to give a direct opinion about somebody that's not yourself, it's almost always going to be taken some way when speaking Japanese. A professor, one that I talk about quite a lot, and that's one of our biggest difficulties in communication, is I feel like his brain is... he's like never really adapted to like it's very Japanesey. And I have two other professors who aren't like that, despite also being Japanese and born and raised in Japan. And for me, it's very common to poke fun at everybody, including my professors.
So.
And once like my professor, like the ones who get it, and they realize, you know, that means like I'm chill with them, very cool with them. But with my one professor, he like takes it like I slapped him in the face. And this happens sometimes when even like Japanese friends I'm close to, I'll say something very joking. I remember one time I used the word bukorosu instead of butsubusu, like to a friend, like it was like bukoroste yaru, you know, almost like a joking way. And one of my friends like really got taken aback. He's like and but I was like, dude, like obviously I'm not being serious.
そうなんだろうね。うん。なんかジョークっていうか、そういうからかいをなんか悪く捉えちゃう人が本当に多くて、なんかこっちはそういうつもりで言ってないのに、なんかそう、なんていうの、捉えられてしまうと、なんか何も言えなくなるんだよね。なんかもう、いちいちなんか気を張って、あ、これ言ったらダメかなとか、なんかずっと考えてると本当に疲れるし、なんかそれこそ、なんだろう、あんまり、その、まあ、周りの人たちとなんか心の距離がちょっと近づけないとか、もう怒ってくるし、なんか本当生きづらいです。どうしましょう。
Yeah, I had this in the category of passive. So I said, you know, the other people's opinions tend to be prioritized more than the speaker themselves. But this also means that if everybody's expected to do that. So if you give an opinion, you're almost saying this is something that is worth other people listening to, if that makes any sense. And it's presumptuous in that sense. So in addition to passive, I wrote, you know, modesty is something that, or at least the Japanese conception of modesty, like I said, is if you say something that is an opinion and is a concrete statement, it is interpreted to be, you know, there's an inherent arrogance in it, because then it assumes that what you've said is somehow beneficial or the other people don't know it. It's, you know, and so that's why in Japanese, it's way more common to not just say, you know, oh, I think this is funny. It's, oh, this seems funny, but I don't know. Maybe what do you think? Or something. And it can be about any statement. Yeah. The weather is nice. No. The weather seems like it might be today. I don't know, though. And so one of my, I guess, problems is if you've noticed, you know, as we go through these, you're like, Joey, you're literally, maybe, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I communicate in the almost exact opposite way as every possible convention for Japanese communications. And I will give you some advice about, you know, how I've learned to balance that. But I do want to say that one more thing, which is it's very difficult to get a Japanese person to speak about themselves or to say anything about their you know, opinion that comes from themselves without being directly prompted about it.
なんだ、しかもなんか例えばある話題について話してて、で、まあある一人がなんかまあ人と違ったことを言うとするよ。そうするとなんか場面が凍りつくんだよね。みたいな。で、ちょっとみたいな、それはちょっとみたいな感じになって、で、なんかって言ってなんか流されちゃうみたいな。だから、なんか言いづらいっていうのもあるし、まあ、みんなに合わせないとね、なんか嫌われるっていうか。
Yeah. I have another thing that I mentioned. So this is I just put quiet as a note. So I think maybe this could have been under modesty, and there's something else I want to talk about related to modesty as well. But if just being loud, it doesn't matter if you do everything else, but if you're just like above the average decimal level, it gets interpreted as being arrogant just by default. As well as wearing things, like this also applies to your clothing. So if you wear clothing that's non-standard or have a build, like, you know, physique that's different from the average Japanese build, that in itself can be interpreted as being like arrogant and intimidating. And there's very good example. I recently went to a meetup in Japan, and there was a guy who was really cool, and I could tell off rip he was super, like, I was like, this guy's friendly, he seems funny. Just him posturing the way he was speaking, and he was almost being like way too nice, like weirdly, like in like the polite Japanese he was using when he was talking to people. But then afterwards, it took like 30 minutes when other people started talking to him, because off rip, I just started making jokes with him because I could tell he was a chill dude. But the other Japanese people said, like honestly, I was scared of you when you came in, and it's just because he has a little bigger of a build, and is just physically taller and has a slightly different Like he had like these dog tags around his like dog tag necklace. But he was a big nerd, and he also did like sumo wrestling and some other stuff. And like I feel like it's so much harder. Like I'm not saying like you don't express yourself, because that's not my opinion at all, but you have to know how you're going to get perceived. And if you do anything, obviously if you're not Japanese off rip, they're going to be more open to there being differences. But like one of the big things is I found into like, how do you still maintain being genuine while exhibiting every trait that's suboptimal for Japanese communication, is acknowledging what you're probably thinking. So if you know that you're perceived in a certain way, you point it out in some self-deprecating way, and then that can break the tension. Especially I'll do that a lot, referring to the fact that I mute loud or speak too much. I'll just directly be say like, yeah, but you're probably tired of hearing me right now, or something like that. And then they'll be taken aback because they're thinking that. And then it'll give them an opportunity to, at the very least, say, no. And then they'll start speaking though. And then the conversation will continue. I have one more category of stuff that I want, which is, how do you tell if someone dislikes you?
なんか遠回しに言ってくる人とか。
So, yeah, will it be romance or not? Friendship or because that's kind of what you're trying to answer, right? No. Both work, romantically, friendship. I'm just wondering, so given all of this, how do you tell if someone dislikes you? Because that's a question I feel like you're trying to help some of your friends answer.
なんか、これは、どの国でもそうだと思うけどさ、何かを、なんていうの、話して、質問し返してこないとか、なんかもう、一言で終わるとか、例えばなんとか、例えばなんて言うんだろう。何の食べ物が好きって聞くじゃん、私が。で、その相手が、寿司、終わりみたいな。なんか、私に興味を持ってないってことじゃん。それは。
What about in terms of, one other thing I noted was, text-based communication is king. So,
絵文字を使わないとか、感情が豊かじゃないとか、スタンプ使わないとか、あと、返信が遅いとか。
Do you think that 返信遅い? I'm wondering to what degree the 返信遅い。
1日2日は仕事の都合とかもあると思うし。だけど、1週間、1ヶ月見ないとか、あと、未読無視、既読無視とかね。あるし、あと、dislike you はね、わかった。例えばなんかに誘うじゃん。誘っても毎回、ちょっとなんとかがあって、みたいな。その当日とか、前日に、やっぱいけないとか、また会ったらなんか誘って、そういう時にさ、また誘ってって言ってまた誘うじゃん。でもまたいけない。どっちなのってなるじゃん。なんか普通だったらさ、いけない、ごめん。この日だったらいけたけど、みたいな。なんて言うんだろうね。来るつもりがある、文章にしてくるじゃん。本当に行きたかった人って。でも、ちょっと、なんていうの、行きたくない人っていうのはさ、ちょっと予定があって行けない、また今度誘ってみたいな。ちょっとぼかしてくんだよね。なんかそれが本当に、次も、もう誘ってほしいのか、ただただ、字面だけ、相手を傷つけないというかわかんないけど、で言ってるだけなのか、本当に私は読めないから困ります。
Yeah, one of the difficulties is, as I don't know if fellow Americans, this question is very trivial in America, I feel. Although there's some people who I feel like are very passive in their communication styles. I feel like both parties, if they're being disliked, it is very obvious because, at least for me, sometimes directly to your face, like, what are you doing? Why did you invite here? Why are you here? Maybe the current generation is a little different from that because I know texting is kind of king in the US and across the world, and calling is like less common, in avoiding confrontation is more common with this generation. But it's hard to ever get an answer. And I have friends who I've had for like 4 or 5, oh gosh, no, that's not how time works. 2018 was 6 years ago. Yeah, like 5-year friends. And still to this day, and I feel like you've talked about this before. I like on paper, I think they're my friend, you know, and like, you know, you check the boxes, but I really do not feel like as much confidence in that statement as I can with many of, you know, American friends. Sometimes even if like the friend I just met, I meet some people in the US and like they'll just make a comment about something in a game store and I'll make a comment about the same thing and immediately hit it off. And then I'm like, yeah, no, we're a friend. If I call them, like I could probably get them to help out with something. Then I have some Japanese people like I've known for 4 years. I'm like, if I was having some sort of difficulty, I'm feeling like, you know, I don't know. Would they just ghost me? If I sent a message, would they do something to help me out? You know what I'm saying? I guess, do you have any ideas the reverse? How do you think if someone likes you? Because I almost think that's a harder question to answer. The dislike.
まあまあでもフリップすればいいんじゃない？だから、よく話す、あと誘ったら、来てくれるとか、まあ来れなくても、次なんとかだったらいけるよとか、もう来る、なんていうの、一緒に遊びたい、一緒に、ハンガーをしたいっていう意思を、まあ伝えてくれるとか、困った時助けてくれるとか、じゃないかな。
What about romantically? Because that's one of the questions that you're more frequently than I'm surprised by the amount of times you're basically treated as a romantic advice columnist by many of your other friends.
Yes. わかんないけど。なんだろうね。まあ、人間ってさ、あれ、まあ、基本的に自分が何かに興味あったらさ、自分から質問したりするじゃん。だから、まあ、相手が私のことを聞いてくれるとか、なんだろう、表面的な会話だけじゃなく、何々についてどう思ってるかとか、あと、どれだけ、どの頻度で話すとか、じゃないかな。
But do you think, to me, that seems like it might be your personal communication style, but I feel like there's a lot of Japanese friendships that I've seen where it is just expected. They're friends, right? They're friends. They've been friends for a long time. They don't really know that much about each other at all. Nothing. They don't know about the personal life, whatever. They're not like doing things together a lot, like, you know, at each other's houses. They always meet in a location outside their house. And the relationship pretty much extends to, like, you know, they are friends and they would both classify each other as friends, but it's more of like, you know, when I go out to an izakaya, I'll invite you. And that's considered to be a standard, like, good friendship, I feel like, in Japan.
まあ、なんていうんだろう。まあ、何人かは、まあ、私のまあ、友達っていうかわかんないけど、知ってる中では、なんか部活とかで、なんか、まあ、すごく、まあ、親しい人たちっていうのは、相手の家に、なんか、もう、泊まったりとか、普通に突撃したりとか、家でハングアウトしたりとかっていうのはやってる人はいるね。多分、まあでも私個人的にそういう関係を築けてないのが、まあちょっと難しいところで、だけど、部活内で仲いい人たちの中でそういうことをしてる人はいる。
No, I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm saying it is way less common to hear about relationships or see relationships like that.
まあ多分社会人になったらそういうことはなんか少なくなってくるかもね。まあ仕事の関係だし。
Does that mean that you had friends, like, you know, when you were younger, you saw more people going directly to other people's houses?
じゃない？まあ大学生は多いと思う。まあ少ない中での多いと思
う。Like what percentage?
いや、パーセンテージわかんないけど、結構いると。
Okay, 何割？
わかんない。
You don't have any above 50%? Below 50%?
個人的に私のまあ家がね、まあ実家がそういう人をインバイトしないとか。
I feel like that's a lot of people's houses though.
いやー、どうなんだろう。わかんない。結構もうスモールワードに住んでるからさ、周りの世界がどうか知らんけど、まあ、田舎に行けば行くほど、相手の家行ったりとか、家族ぐるみでの付き合いとかは多いんじゃない？
The reason I'm saying this is not because of my personal experience with the friends, is because I'm thinking of like not just my friends, but my friends of friends and their friends. Like, I'm like, have I seen a relationship that I think would be equivalent to something like I've seen with my friends in the US, where like you can just walk into someone's house uninvited at like 4 p.m. on a Tuesday and jump in. They're like, hey, what's up? And then you're like, hey, want to do something, something. And then like that kind of thing. I see that with neighbors, but I'd say that's more like neighborly relationships. And it's obviously that's like inaka, and those people have known each other for 40 years. But I have not, I guess I just have not seen an example of that maybe I believe it probably exists. I've seen depictions in anime, but I don't know of anybody personally who fits under that category. But yeah, also if you think you're an introvert and you're like, I'll be killing it in Japan because, I already have a lot of these traits. I would say the thing is, you don't get a free pass into having a pre-established group to make friends. So yeah, introverts can make friends. Obviously, Japanese, a lot of people are introverted, and they have friends, some of them. But a lot of that friendship starts from a group, from being in a group. So if you're introverted and you're not in a group, which is most people who aren't Japanese, you're going to have to do a whole lot of legwork to be able to get yourself, accepted into a group in the first place to even have this interaction. So it's not necessarily advantageous to have that personality type either. I mean, do you have any advice to anybody who, what's it called? We had a guy who said, I'm an Indian man looking to to marry a Japanese woman to help me. That was an actual, like on Twitter, we got a message like that.
それが本気で言ってるかわかんないけどさ。知らない。知らないです。頑張ってください。
頑張ってください. That's our message. But yeah, like I said, self-deprecation does go a long way, as well as being really good at reading the room. But I guess being comfortable with silence for longer than you think, because if you're used to talking a lot, Japanese people really, like the difference between talking a lot in America and Japan are so different that a lot of times you can let silence for 5 seconds and that's how long it takes for them to start speaking. Or if you just give them a second to start speaking, they'll just wait and then you'll be like, okay, they clearly don't want to say anything. Yeah. So that'd be my advice. 戻りました。We are
back.
子供の時からずっと行きたかった場所に行ける。まあ気がするけど。
Really? Is that the place you wanted to go?
まあそのなんか頭の中のイメージはなんか日本について思ってた時はこの場所よく頭の中に出てきたって感じ。
Oh. So,
その場所はどこだ?
Finally, we can go to Okinawa! Yay!
沖縄。はい。パチパチパチパチパチ。その2ヶ月前かな。その夏のエピソード覚えてる？なんか日本の夏は最高っていう。
I guess, yeah.
うん。そのなんか日本の夏について考えているときに沖縄は最初に頭の中に浮かぶ。沖縄。
That's very American.
で、日本ではどうもその夏について考えているときに沖縄に
I guess, yeah, a lot of people go to Okinawa for summer break, like vacation, summer break, like trip. And
ってことは、あゆみは行ったことあるかな？
I've never been there, actually. My family is not like a domestic, how do you say, like traveler?
国内旅行者。
So, like, yeah, like my family instead went to like other countries. So, yeah, actually, this is my first time to go to Okinawa, and I'm really excited because, like, yeah, in my mind, I think Okinawa is kind of like different from the mainland.
最初のセクションに似てるよね。この話。
Yeah, yeah. Because like Okinawa is kind of influenced by America a lot.
あ、そういうことか。まあそうだけど。
And yeah. So like the weather is different.
まあそれがアメリカの影響じゃないけど。
And the food they eat is different. And people are different. I guess they're more friendly than the mainland people. So
ちなみに日本語で沖縄人言うの？それともなんか沖縄の日本人？
わかんない。
なんかわかるその違いは。その自分が沖縄人だと思ったら、まあ、使えるんだけど、同時に沖縄のから来てる人は日本人だから。
いや、沖縄出身です。Like, I'm from 沖縄とか言うかも。Yeah. There are some people who are from Okinawa in my university, and yeah, they say like, "Oh, I'm from Okinawa."
で、その沖縄についてなんかどういう違いがあるかっ と思ってる人は。
A facial structure.
そういうことじゃなくて。
What?
人種的にはあれだけど。
And like unique family names.
今、その性格と、性格の話してるんだけど、最初のセクション覚えてる？もちろん人との関係とか。
They're more extroverted かな。Yeah. And kind, friendly.
で、
Oh God, I hate mainland people. Sorry.
どういうこと急にで、沖縄の、なんていうの？沖縄の人？沖縄出
身の人？
沖縄出身の人の友達いる？
Yeah. The one guy I was with in the last department I went for clinical rotation. He is from Okinawa and he was pretty friendly, and then he asks many questions to people, and kind of easy to talk to.
で、その学校に関するイメージなんだけど、その沖縄に関しては本州とちょっと違う、考え方があるのかな。それは
I watched YouTube videos about Okinawa, and educational system, like for elementary school, middle school, high school, it's not that, how do you say, like developed compared to like Tokyo, because like Tokyo has a lot of like, how do you say, what is considered to be high level schools. So like people who want to like receive that good education, they go to Tokyo or like Kanto area to do that. So I guess that's the reason some people from Okinawa came all the way to my university.
いや、それはなんかちょっと本末転倒なんじゃないと思うんだけど、その私が分かってる情報、分かってるというか知ってる情報は正しくないかもしれないけど、その学校の偏差値の違いはあるかもしれないけど、そもそも沖縄人、沖縄の人、沖縄出身の人はなんかすごく勉強しないといけない。なんか勉強はなんか世の中で一番大事なことだと思わない印象があったんだけど。
Yeah, like more like a なんかchilledとかゆっくりしてる。
ゆったり。
Like island life。
そのゆったり教育。
ゆとり教育。
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 ゆとり教育は何？その分からない人は。
ゆとり教育って何？わかんない。Like that's my generation though. Like
分かんないの？そう、ゆとり教育はなんていうの？今なんか難しいね。本当に制度に関わってることがたくさんある。
Yeah, we have like glass textbooks.
まずその教育はめっちゃやばかった時があって、もちろん今でも難しいいろんな大変なところあるんだけど、で何年代なんか2000の話、2000年の話かな。でそういう状況はやばかったからいろんななんか変更しないといけない。なんか子供のためにこういうことをなんかもっと優しくしないといけないところがあって、でゆとり教育の中でその教科書が少なくなったってことと、なんだろう、時間なんかわかる？自分ゆとり教育受けたから、その自分の教育と前の教育の違いは何か。
I went to cram school in like elementary school, so that was not ゆとり。
ゆとりじゃないよね。
Yeah. I mean, like I didn't study for elementary school, so
それはゆとり教育の影響があったってこと？
That was like pretty easy, so I didn't have to study for elementary school, but like I just had to study for like cram school and then 中学受験 so、
フィンランドの影響なんかどこからゆとり教育が来たのかな？
I don't know. Yeah, maybe I should search.
とにかくそういうなんか勉強大事だけど一番なんか大事なことじゃないという概念、概念というか言い方があるって聞いたことあるんだけど、その沖縄、出身の人は持ってるんだけど。
And so we said that we are we were going to Okinawa for, なんていうの trip, なんていうの trip の purpose だけど、actually the main purpose is to see hospitals there.
そもそも私が行きたかった。でもなんかいろんななんか、まあ、説明できるよね。その、まあ、あゆみは、今は、
So, yeah, I wanna like, so no, I'm in, how do you say, like the season, where I have to decide which hospital to do residency. And one time, the other day, I joined a seminar, with, like, well-known doctor and my senpai, who worked in, Okinawa hospital. And yeah, after I joined that seminar, I thought that going to Okinawa for residency was a good idea because Okinawa is pretty kind of famous for like good education, like for residency. And also I want to use and practice my English. And I assume that there are many foreign people in Okinawa, I guess. Yeah, like military. So maybe there will be more opportunities to use and practice English. So yeah, that's...
で、私はただ夏好きな人なんで、その沖縄に行ける機会があるななんて思って、なんか絶対行った方がいいよ。その結構行きたかった。ってことは、まあ、いつ行くかは別の話だけど、その背景が変わったら、まあ多分外でのポッドキャストできるんじゃないかな。わかんないんだけど。まあ考える。その外でできたらやりたいって感じ。その夏の海が聞こえる。期待しててね。And we're back with the final section. If you made to the final section, that means send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with a comment, question, language related, and or otherwise. And this week we have a new commenter, Neurotrino, which I swear is a substance. I've heard there's that made up, like something. I've heard that before.
中性子とかじゃない？違うか。Neutrino.
But yeah, this is a long comment, as all Fluency listeners write long comments. I don't know, it's something genetic, I assume. And I will do you the respect of reading it in full. So prepare yourself, guys. This is actually referring to an episode where we talked about polyglots a long time ago. So we have people, if you're listening now, I guess you wouldn't be listening now if you're catching up to the podcast. But if you're, if this is the future and there are more episodes on the future and you're listening to this episode, feel free to, drop a podcast or comment about even an earlier episode, It's not like we fully covered everything. I'm always like reading them. So yeah, Neutrino. The thing about learning multiple languages is it is possible if someone is willing to put in the time and effort. Some aspects I think you did not consider are Japanese is an exceptionally difficult language to learn for speakers of English or other European languages. Maybe the most difficult. Most estimates range from many thousand hours, let's just say 2,000 plus hours, and probably a lot more. This is exceptionally high. Only Chinese, Arabic, and Korean are ranked as being this difficult by U.S. Foreign Institute. You can get to a high level in many other languages with maybe 1,000 hours or less. In other words, in the time it's taken you to reach a basic level in Japanese, you already could have become fluent in multiple European languages. At the same time, it is possible to get to a fairly high level of Japanese within 5 years, with a lot of focused effort. Yes, you probably are not at a native level, and you probably never will be. Even if you spend the next 20 years chasing after never achievable perfection with less and less actual results to show for it. For many, that is not as satisfying as making real progress in a new language. That is the reason someone becomes a polyglot. Diminishing returns is a thing, and people are not failing if they achieve a high level of fluency and comprehension that is still short of perfection, but then decide to move on to another language. Or even just decide a moderate level is enough and want to learn something else. Honestly, it is just as much, if not more elitist, to lock people into this perception that you should only study one language until you can pass as a native in every sense, and probably one who holds several academic degrees, it seems. When the last 10% or even 20% towards native language has hardly any practical effect even for business or similar purposes, let alone for consuming a broad range of media and conducting daily conversations. Especially since most people probably will not or even want to pass as a native, let alone have any reason to. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Another thing is also, the more languages you learn, the easier it becomes. You know German and English, Dutch will be learned faster. You know a Romance language, you can shave a lot of hours off the time to progress in the others. Also, the process of learning a language, especially a very difficult one like Japanese, teaches you how to learn a language much more efficiently for you. Following that, for Asian languages, since you mentioned how there's no reason to study Japanese, Korean, and Chinese at the same time because they're all difficult, well, if you learn one, the others just become a lot easier. So I would say it's the opposite. There is a lot of reasons to learn the other. If you feel satisfied at the level you've reached in one and have a curiosity towards the others, exactly because you just saved yourself starting from scratch and unlocked a bonus starter boost in the language that otherwise would be so difficult. Specifically, you will pick up the sentence structures in Korean and Hanzi. I don't know how this is pronounced. Yeah, I just call it kanji, But in Chinese, much faster if you are coming from Japanese. A huge benefit to an otherwise tiresome starting phrase. Of course, there's no benefit to start all three if you are still a beginner. If you just want to dedicate yourself to one language only to the exclusion of all else, that's fine, but don't be mad if other people manage to learn several because they decide to spend their time that way. That said, I agree with your points about the toxicity in polyglot culture, prioritizing performance over communication or real enjoyment and engagement with culture. However, this kind of exploitative scheming and disrespectful trickstering can be found in people focusing only on one target language, with many examples in the Japanese learning community, including prominent names self-admittedly cheating Japanese people to think they are better than they actually are. I laugh when people sometimes post clips proving their Japanese is so good because they got Nihongo Jozu, as if that isn't the easiest compliment to receive, no matter if they actually speak well or not. And if they speak well, they very well know Japanese people say this to everyone who can say arigato. Thank you so much for the comment. We always appreciate a new commenter. I mean, I'm not sure if you heard that. It was a lot. If you have any thoughts about that, you can say it. I can give you the floor first. I obviously had a bunch of thoughts. Are you passing it to me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I couldn't tell if this was a combative energy or not, or you're just very passionate about this subject in specific. Because I think I agree with you. Like I said, the point I was trying to make is I don't think it's productive. And from what I've seen, the goals most people have with language learning, learning multiple languages at the same time does not seem to achieve any of the goals that people express wanting to do, to achieve, If I want to get to a certain level in a language, I think it's just far more effective to focus on one language and then get to the level and then go to another one. From all I can see, whether it be, the data I've looked at as well, the, anecdotes I've seen people learn multiple languages at the same time, they almost always say it just doesn't really work that well. That's kind of what I was referring to. But in terms of learning multiple languages, to a certain degree that you want to learn to, go ahead. I have no beef at all. I also, maybe the reason I might have been interpreted in this way is because I'm not a language learner. I'm a guy who likes Japanese stuff pretty much. And the language happens to be one of those things. And therefore, I had to learn that to engage with it. So I don't view language learning the same way. I don't really find find language learning in general interesting. I just find Japanese interesting. So I'm not
あとなんか目的にもよるよね。多分さ、こういうじゃなくて、なんて言うんだろう。何カ国語も、同時に、勉強したりとかしてる人たちっていうのはさ、旅行したいとか、タイトルが欲しいとか、いろいろあると思うんだけど、そういった意味で、そんなに、文化的に、インゲージしなくてもいいみたいな感じじゃん。で、そういうタイプの人がいると。で、もう一つのタイプとしては、上位みたいに、日本語が好きで、文化も好きで、それに自分自身を、なんて言うんだろう。イマーシブ、させたいみたいな人がいると。その2タイプがいて、で、どっちが悪い、どっちが悪くないっていうわけじゃないんだけど、両方あっていいとは思うね。多分何カ国語もやってる人たちっていうのは、それぞれにさ、文化的な、興味とか入れちゃうと、時間もかかるし、労力もかかるし、もう、無理じゃん。だから、効率よく、表面的にやって、旅行行った時に、なんていうの、困らない程度にしたいとかね、そういう目的があるんだろうしっていう。ね。
Yeah. I will say I do have 2 points. One is there also is a different appreciation, I would say, of you're talking about diminishing returns. And I'll say I've actually never personally experienced this notion of diminishing returns. And it's probably because of learners. It's harder to, I guess, like tell that you're improving, but like the more you improve, the better you're able to see about how much you actually sucked the whole time, if that makes any sense. And you're able to see your progress from previous versions of yourself compared to before. And you're able to understand the gap in between getting to that level, if that makes sense. Like, you know, even now, like when I listen to Amy we'll play a medical like doctor giving a lecture, and then she'll throw that video on 2 times speed. And I'll be like, I could not follow that before. And I can like follow now, and I'll miss some words because I don't understand. I don't have the text to see, but I'm like, I can follow what's being said, and without the words won't be able to follow. And then in my head, I'm like, man, it'd be cool if I could be able to speak with the same, or like there was a presentation that was given by a guy, and to him it's just very casual, like medical presentation, but he just had impeccable kegel the entire time, and he was speaking with blistering speed the entire time, and I could follow what he was saying. Obviously it wasn't like using as like special terminology. I'm like, in my head I'm like, if I can understand that means I can, like that I could do that, and I can appreciate that a lot. Almost like my appreciation for Japanese increases more and more. But I will, sorry, go ahead while you on this topic.
なんかさっきのなんだっけ、敬語めちゃめちゃスピーチなんか使ってる人ってさ、内容言ってるのはさ、なんかその全部のスピーチの中の多分 20% か 30% ぐらいでさ、残りは全部敬語の長い語尾で埋め尽くされてる。
Yeah, the meaning is really simple. They'll just say yes, but instead it turns in like そうではないかと思うんですけどどうでしょうか。
なんかなんとかしますっていうのがなんとかさせていただきますみたいな。
させていただき。
なんかもう2倍ぐらい長くなってるんだよね。
Yeah, but I still, like you said, I would say your appreciation kind of increases, and you realize that diminishing returns is all like about how you define diminishing returns, I guess. And the other thing is, I'm extremely, like, I'm really not dogmatic in terms of what someone shouldn't learn, even with a language. Like, it's like I said, it's not even that I really like the Japanese language on a whole. I just like certain parts of the language. I don't care at all for pitch accent. I think we've said this multiple times. Like, it's a whole big thing, and people get into it. I find it vaguely interesting sometimes. I'm like, ooh, I like the sound of that. Or I can hear it. I have some understanding. There's atamadaka, like the different structures of it. But I'm like, to me, I'm like, it seems like a pain. It doesn't really help with communicating. But sometimes I like it, and to me, that's sufficient. But I know some people are like, no, I want to be the pitch accent master, and my goal is to be the pitch accent master. And if I don't sound 98% like a Japanese person, what are you even doing? But that's never been me. So I'm totally fine with being, nah, I just disregard this part of Japanese. And I don't feel like I make it, I'm like a very selfish learner. It's lazy fluency. I'm like, whatever you like about the language is the only part that I feel like you have to interact with. I really don't think, I don't care. Like, when I tutor Japanese, and some people are like, hey, I don't want to learn kanji. I'm like, hey, here are the things that you're probably going to not get benefit from avoiding kanji. Understand that. Now that you've understood that, screw kanji, or whether it be whether writing or speaking or whatever. So yeah, I feel like you feel like that way with English grammar to some degree.
いや、忘れてるよ。
No, I'm saying that I feel the disinterest in English grammar. You know what I'm saying?
いや、disinterest っていうか、ただ単に忘れてるだけ。別に、なんだろう。グラマーって何？どういうこと？教科書的なグラマーってこと？
Well, define it however you want. Are there any parts about English that you're just like, yeah, I understand this is a thing, but I really don't care to learn it?
なんだろう。なんだっけ？ I've got something. なんだっけ？アメリカ英語だと、なんか、合ってるけど、イギリス英語だと違うみたいなよくあるじゃん。なんかそういうのとか、まあ通じればいいんじゃねみたいな。
Yeah.
ね。とか、まあなんか、なんていうの、最近は本当に、いや、これ、なんか、なんていうんだっけ。しっくりくる、か来ないかで、これ合ってるかなみたいな、判断してるから、なんか、そこまで文法、カッチカチに気にすることはなくなったかもね。それがいいのか悪いのかわかんないんだけど、
For me, another one of those is a lot of times in Japanese, there are things that are more natural to a Japanese person to say, but in my opinion, are less conductive to the goal of accomplishing whatever you want to accomplish. So yeah, it might be more natural for a Japanese person to say, instead of saying, I don't want to hang out with you, or, more often like, no, today's booked because I have this on here. Or maybe I'm not really interested. That'd be more natural to say. It wouldn't be that natural to say that. And the Japanese person probably would say something like, yeah, let's go next time. But to me, it like fundamentally steps on like my morals and like as I view myself, and therefore I refuse to say the thing that is more natural, even though it's more natural to say it. And
じゃあさ、待って、今質問思いついたけど、一緒に遊んだ人の相手がね、すごく楽しんでて、で、その人がジョイに、また遊ぼうって言ったとするじゃん。でもジョイは、正直その人のことをあんまなんか、面白いと思ってなくて、ちょっともう一回遊びたくはないなと思ったらどう返す？
I'm trying to think if I've had that experience, because I'm pretty, is there a time where I didn't really enjoy it's hard for me to even think about that experience.
イマジネーションでもいいけど、
no, but I'm saying if you're around me and I don't like you, it'd be really confusing as to how that I don't even know how it happened. I'm very direct. Maybe the podcast doesn't come out as much, but I have so many stories I haven't told about beefs with people. I've had people like in my high school, our president, like our school president, like literally tried to assault me twice. Once like ran at me like, with scissors, and the other time he just tried to use fists, like literally. And so I'm very direct if I don't like somebody. Like I'll just straight up being like, hey, you're an asshole, fuck off. I don't want to be around you. And so I find it very, yeah, I know, but I don't mind. I'm not trying to hurt people though. And if I am trying to hurt people, I'm doing it intentionally because I feel like they're an asshole. But if we just don't get along with somebody, then, there's probably some part, there's a genuine aspect of them that I do get along with, and I convey that. And so obviously maybe like through obscurity, you could consider that through lying, but in my opinion, like, there is a truth, and like if someone enjoyed it, there's probably a chance I enjoyed the interaction as well. So I guess it's hard for me to imagine that specific situation. Okay. I just with the person, I don't think I've ever had that specific thing. If I'm not having fun, the other person probably isn't having fun.
Because you're so direct, だからthey will sense it.
Yeah, well, I didn't have to sense anything. I just there's not much room for from having to interpret. But yeah, thank you for the comment. I really appreciate it. I'm not sure if it was competitive or not, but I think we agree. Let us know your thoughts about whether it be Okinawa or our first section on how to communicate with people, or the polyglot. Any of those, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. That bell means we reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us on the lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and are just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com and you might respond in the next episode. Also, consider supporting us on Ko-Fi to get video updates, Discord access, and or to just lend a hand. And finally, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Amy.
Signing off.
Jane.